Welcome to Overcoming Unpredictability, a roundtable on supply chain resilience brought to you by EU Automation. EU Automation provides a swift and reliable supply of industrial automation components, becoming the go-to solution for manufacturers worldwide. I'm Georgie Frost. Manufacturers are facing a rise in critical disruptions, from large-scale geopolitical conflicts to climate change-fueled natural disasters and trade wars. These challenges trickle down to the factory floor, such as unexpected shortages of spare parts, which can bring production lines to a standstill. Engineers and process managers have to contend with the unpredictable in the face of increasing regulation. So how do you overcome these challenges? And how do you plan and deal with the unpredictable? Well, joining us to discuss this today.
My name is Rob Thurston. I'm Head of Purchasing and Logistics at SPP Pumps UK.
My name is Ana Maria Velica, founder at Green Apples Career.
My name is Amy Sue. I'm Head of Supply Chain for Dishman Captain Armsys Europe Limited.
Anna Maria, if I could just start with you, because you speak to leaders in this space regularly. What are they telling you? What are the biggest problems and disruptions that they're facing at the moment?
More than ever, supply chain has faced with massive black swans. We see huge inflation. We are seeing geopolitical challenges. We are seeing lots of consumer trends putting a lot of strain on supply chain. We are seeing a global shortage of skilled labor, and this comes with a necessity for automation and for stepping up the game, for being agile, but also to prove they are ethical and they are green.
Rob, you're an engineer and supply chain manager. Talk me through some of the disruptions that Anna Maria was talking about from your perspective. How does it impact you day to day? What are you seeing and how's it changed over your career?
So I think the biggest impact we saw during my career would have been Brexit. So I was working for an aerospace company when Brexit was first mooted, 2016, and we were very, very well prepared. We had people lobbying government all the way through preparation with all our suppliers and our customers. Despite all that planning and preparation, we still could not foresee the disruption that Brexit would deliver. And it took a lot of hard work to get through it all. And then if you move forward only a few months to a pandemic that nobody expected, all that planning for Brexit was useful, but it didn't resolve all the issues because the whole world shut down and you just could not plan for that. And the only safety measure you would have had is holding lots and lots of stock, which again is a pressure that procurement constantly faces, not to hold stock.
Amy, from your perspective?
Actually, I share a similar experience with Rob. So I lead the Brexit risk mitigation project in the organization. So we also took the worst case scenario plan based on the worst situation it could be. And we also did the same approach. We prepare in advance, try to leave us enough time to cover all of this. So it turned out the impacting area not only for the business regulation perspective, but also for the industry regulation perspective. Because before UK and the EU pretty share much the same regulation. And now it's starting to get a little bit different. And for us, luckily, we have our company entities located in Europe. So by internal collaboration, we managed to reroute the business mainly to our client, mainly to our European client. So we see the internal collaboration really help us to get out of this one of the critical moment.
But presumably before Brexit, there were also different challenges that you faced.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that changed, certainly in my lifetime, has been outsourcing. So moving production away from the UK, moving it to lower cost countries. And that in itself reduced costs, but now what we're seeing is the disruption from COVID, the disruption from the Ukraine war. Those supply chains are getting longer and more difficult. And therefore you've got to plan so far ahead. I think government involvement in business decisions can be very disruptive. So with the Ukraine war, there was a ban put on steel coming from Russia. That was put in place on a given date, and you could not use Russian material or product made from Russian material from that date. So if you held stock, which coming out of Brexit and going straight into COVID, you ended up holding more stock because you were nervous, you ended up with stock that you couldn't use, or you couldn't use for Europe, and therefore you end up carrying the cost of that.
Do you think companies are just firefighting essentially when faced with these big challenges, or actually is the whole process being fundamentally changed as a result?
Firefighting was during the pandemic, trying to keep up with the panic buying. But now I think this is the lesson learned. As you said, it's about how can we partner more strategically in a vertical way with the suppliers, but also with the retailers to do joint business plans as jointly demand forecasting.
During COVID, there was lack of information. Everyone was hunkering down and nothing was happening. But quite often, suppliers, especially overseas, may well not tell you everything because they don't want to tell you bad news. Now, I think what we're seeing is a lot of buyers are demanding more information. When is something leaving? What ship is it on? And demanding that level of visibility of what's going through their supply chain, and that's key. Information is definitely key for all of us. But I think there's also a challenge that comes from our customers where you've got genuine problems that you're trying to resolve which relate to the delays, but not all customers are as understanding as others. And it becomes quite a difficult conversation up to our end users, all the way from our raw suppliers. It can be quite a convoluted supply chain, and it's quite difficult to explain that out to a customer who's not getting the product they want when they want it. So it is tough.
One of the way we approach it is try to engage the customer from the first day when the project is on, to try to make them understand there's a long supply chain behind. We try to negotiate for a long-term call of contract, which we get more commitment from the customer, but also allows more time to prepare the supply chain operation. So it's we say it's sometimes it's an education process for our clients as well, made them to realize that actually it's not that easy, the whole way how supply chain work. It could be very complex.
We've spoken a lot about external big events, but are there any sort of intrinsic problems that are going through supply chains that have almost been forever thus, that need to be improved upon or changed completely?
It's mainly from the regulation change. There are new regulations coming up, the ESG, carbon emission, net zero, and also there's a German Supply Chain Act also coming into effect. So it prompts us as a professional have to proactively keep an eye on this regulation movement, to keep doing the assessment. Okay, are we compliant? How to do the gap analysis? How far behind are we, or what the action we need to take? So it's definitely more learning journey will be for the supply chain professionals nowadays.
Companies, more than ever, they need to think about an unplanned shutdown. You need to think about, okay, if it breaks tomorrow, what's happening? What is the contingency if the line that produces this critical product for the UK breaks down? Big companies, they need to think about their fixed assets, because it's not easy to build overnight a production site. And I think what we haven't touched, and I'm absolutely sure you have come across with the shortage of skilled labor. This is major, and this is what I'm seeing also when I mentor organizations. They say, Anna, how can we make sure that we avoid shortage, or we can attract the right skilled labor? It's so hard because the world has changed, because we became a bit more conscious about money is not everything, a title is not everything. So people are less focused on having a full-time job in a major with a fancy title. They care more about flexibility working. By the time they invest in a skilled workforce, they lose that workforce.
So how can procurement processes be improved then?
I think out-and-out purchasing processes are pretty robust these days in most companies. But I think strategically, you have to think differently. And Amy mentioned it earlier, working in collaboration with other companies, other suppliers, customers, that's vital into today's supply chain.
How much do engineering and maintenance professionals have the autonomy to overcome sort of these barriers, I suppose?
It's difficult at an individual engineer level because you're looking for a solution for whatever it may be, and you're very singularly focused on that solution. And then your purchasing person may well come in and say, no, we're not doing that, we're going to go this way. So it's difficult for an engineer to put together a solution in isolation. And that comes back to all your internal departments pulling in the same direction.
One of the best practice, what you are saying, is what companies call it integrated business planning. So it's important that supply chain engineers are not standalone taking decisions. They are part of a business integrated decision making and planning.
What you've all been describing sounds like a new normal. Is that fair? Are production managers and engineers adapting to this new normal? Are they upskilling themselves?
They have to change. They have to adapt to the new normal. But there is a tendency, if there's a crisis, to return to the old way because it was tried and tested.
I think they need to embrace quicker the automation, because automation doesn't replace people. Automation is here to do the routine tasks. You will do more innovation instead of doing more repetitive routine tasks. It's a paradigm shift.
Absolutely. We have already seen the innovation coming, especially with AI is such a hot buzz right now. There's a lot of startup company developing AI embedded software to help the overall supply chain operation to improve the overall efficiency, and you can provide much more flexibility to your supply chain forecast.
I want to go back to something that Anna Maria was talking about, and that's the breakdown situation. And Rob, you were talking about prepare for everything. So I just wanted to know how much time is wasted in searching for a reliable parts supplier. What is the sort of repercussion of that?
The pressures on maintenance managers is huge in terms of carrying stock. You're spending the company's cash. And if it's sat there and not being used, it's idle cash. So there's a lot of pressure not to hold stock. So therefore, the supply, the reliable supply of parts on time, when you need them, where you need them, the correct quality is absolutely vital. And does it take a lot of time up? Yes, it does, because you've got to engage with your maintenance team, your engineers, and the supply chain in order to ensure that you get the right supplier.
More and more we are seeing a more integrated supply chain, which means companies, they don't like to put the risk outside of their companies, and they like to have to do mergers with key companies in order to prevent that breakdown. So then they have everything in-house. So, and I think another important component is the pressure of this planet. We like brands who are becoming and who prove to be sustainable, green packaging, less carbon footprint. Can you imagine if a breakdown happens and I need to bring some spare parts from Japan? Just the footprint, the carbon footprint, you just imagine. So there are companies that are now preventing and reducing the carbon footprint by thinking about, okay, if this breaks, what alternative we have here locally with a shorter supply chain to avoid these long supply chains that create carbon emissions.
If some company really proactively work on that, it's big advantage. It could facilitate the sales function nowadays.
And one of the other things that I'm seeing as a trend, certainly moving forward, is the potential for insourcing. I'm seeing a number of things moving closer to home, possibly as a result of wars, COVID, etc. But supply chains are changing, and they're changing for the better, which is great to see. And we're part of that, which is exciting.
I used to do the demand planning with my team based on a historic forecast, and 5 years ago, the company brought a different automation, a different process to do demand planning, more integrated, and they brought mathematicians. And they have now mathematical models that predicts events like weather, like, I don't know, black swans, in order to do an accurate forecast. So the world is changing so much, and the innovation is here to stay.
Okay, so we come back in 5-10 years' time. What do you think we'll be talking about? What is the future of supply chain and procurement?
The role of the buyer will have changed still further, where they are more integrated in with their suppliers and they're spending less time on admin. We've seen automation in procurement. I think that's got to go further. And what that means is the individuals know more about their suppliers, know more about their products, and are fully absorbed into that supply chain.
So the supply chain, the procurement concept is changing by itself, and plus the emerging the technology, so how to utilize it, how to grasp the latest technology to help us with the daily work.
Finally, we said change is hard. Give us your do's and don'ts, your key do's and don'ts for adapting to change in this industry, Rob.
I think key is have an open mind. Always look at things as an opportunity. I think that's key.
To thrive is bring people with you and put people first, attract, retain, and motivate them for them to stay there.
Embrace the change. Don't be afraid of any challenges. Take it as opportunity. Just utilize it and learn from it.
Amy, Anna Maria, Rob, thank you so much.